Chapter 12. Camp 3. May 9, 1996. 24,000 feet. I looked down. Descent was totally unappetizing. Too much labor. Too many sleepless nights, and too many dreams had been invested to bring us this far. We couldn't come back for another try next weekend. To go down now, even if we could have, would be descending to a future marked by one huge question. What might have been? Thomas F. Hornbein. Everest, the West Ridge. Arising lethargic and groggy after my sleepless night at Camp 3, I was slow to dress, melt water, and get out of the tent on Thursday morning, May 9th. By the time I loaded my backpack and strapped on my crampons, most of the rest of Hall's group was already ascending the ropes toward Camp 4. Surprisingly, Lou Kasishki and Frank Fishbeck were among them. Because of their ravaged state when they arrived in camp the previous evening, I'd assumed that both men would decide to throw in the towel. "Good on ya, mates," I exclaimed, borrowing a phrase from the antipodal contingent, impressed that my cohorts had sucked it up and resolved to push on. As I rushed to join my teammates, I looked down to see a queue of approximately 50 climbers from other expeditions moving up the ropes, too. The first of them were now immediately below me, not wanting to become entangled in what was sure to be a massive traffic jam, which would prolong my exposure to the intermittent fusillade of stones whizzing down the face from above. Among other hazards, I picked up my pace and resolved to move toward the head of the line. Because only a single rope snaked up the lots of face, however, it wasn't easy to pass slower climbers. Andy's encounter with the falling rock was very much on my mind every time I unclipped from the line to move around somebody. Even a small projectile would be enough to send me to the bottom of the face if it struck while I was disengaged from the rope. Leapfrogging past others, moreover, was not only nerve-wracking but exhausting. Like an underpowered Yugo trying to pass a line of other vehicles on a steep hill. I had to keep the accelerator jammed to the floor for a distressingly long time to get around anybody, leaving me gasping so hard that I worried I was going to puke into my oxygen mask. Climbing with oxygen for the first time in my life, I took a while to get used to it. Although the benefits of using gas at this altitude, 24,000 feet, were genuine, they were hard to discern immediately. As I fought to catch my breath after moving past 3 climbers, the mask actually gave the illusion of asphyxiating me, so I tore it from my face, only to discover breathing was even harder without it. By the time I surmounted the cliff of brittle, ochre-hued limestone known as the Yellow Band, I had worked my way to the front of the queue and was able to settle into a more comfortable pace. Moving slowly but steadily, I made a rising leftward traverse across the top of the lot's face, then ascended a prow of shattered black schist called the Geneva Spur. I'd finally gotten the hang of breathing through my oxygen rig, and had moved more than an hour ahead of my nearest companion. Solitude was a rare commodity on Everest, and I was grateful to be granted a bit of it on this day, in such a remarkable setting. At 25,900 feet, I paused on the crest of the spur to drink some water and take in the view. The thin air had a shimmering, crystalline quality that made even distant peaks seem close enough to touch. Extravagantly illuminated by the midday sun, Everest's summit pyramid loomed through an intermittent gauze of clouds. Squinting through my camera's telephoto lens at the upper southeast ridge, I was surprised to see 4 ant-like figures moving almost imperceptibly toward the south summit. I deduced that they must be climbers from the Montenegrin expedition. If they succeeded, they would be the first team to reach the top this year. It would also mean that the rumors we'd been hearing of impossibly deep snow were unfounded. If they made the summit, maybe we had a chance of making it too. But the plume of snow now blowing from the summit ridge was a bad sign. The Montenegrins were struggling upward through ferocious wind. I arrived on the South Col, our launching pad for the summit assault, at 1:00 p.m. A forlorn plateau of bulletproof ice and windswept boulders 26,000 feet above sea level. It occupies a broad notch between the upper ramparts of Lhotse and Everest. Roughly rectangular in shape, about 4 football fields long by 2 across, the col's eastern margin drops 7,000 feet down the Kangshung face into Tibet. The other side plunges 4,000 feet to the western Khum. Just back from the lip of this chasm, at the col's westernmost edge, the tents of Camp 4 squatted on a patch of barren ground, surrounded by more than 1,000 discarded oxygen canisters. If there is a more desolate, inhospitable habitation anywhere on the planet, I hope never to see it. As the jet stream encounters the Everest Massif and is squeezed through the V-shaped contours of the South Col, the wind accelerates to unimaginable velocities. It's not unusual for the winds at the col actually to be stronger than the winds that rip the summit. The nearly constant hurricane blowing through the col in early spring explains why it remains as naked rock and ice, even when deep snow blankets adjacent slopes. Everything not frozen in place here has been blasted into Tibet. When I walked into Camp 4, 6 Sherpas were struggling to erect Hall's tents in a 50-knot tempest. Helping them put up my shelter, I anchored it to some discarded oxygen canisters, wedged beneath the largest rocks I could lift, then dove inside to wait for my teammates and warm my icy hands.